Well, welcome everyone on Zoom. I hope you can see us. Lena will be monitoring your questions so that we can address them as we go during our question section. With that said, thank you as well for making sure this happens. Sometimes the board gets the credit, but the reality is the staff members here at Commerce are the ones who make sure things happen. So a big thank you to Tom as well. So with that said, we do have a great panel of speakers. We do have 5 of them, 6 of them. So we'll go ahead and skip introductions in the interest of time. And let's go ahead and get started here. I'd first like to say that business, public safety, and justice are the 3 pillars that really uphold the strength of our community. And it really is an honor to convene here with our esteemed chiefs, police chiefs, sheriffs, and district attorneys. You know, their combined insights will shed light on the current state of our streets, ensuring that commerce thrives alongside safety and justice. And in the spirit of entrepreneurship and community, let's harness today's insights for a prosperous and secure future. So with that said, we will first hear from our Salem Chief of Police. Then we'll hear from our Keizer Chief of, and let me mention their names for those who may not know. So Salem Chief of Police Womack, please raise your hand. Then we will hear from Keizer Chief of Police Copeland.
Yep. And
okay.
Go for it. Now you're gonna make us all feel less.
We'll then hear from Marion County Sheriff Hunter. Polk County Sheriff Garton. Did I pronounce that right?
yeah.
Marion County Deputy District Attorney Murphy.
Yeah.
Polk County District Attorney Felton. Then we will switch it to Q&A. Okay. So let's give it a big round of applause for all of them. I think we got an F- Salem showing our love to.
We're about to start the wave. Ready? Okay.
So with that said, in the back will be their bios. There are too many to read, so in the interest of time, you feel free to read them. And with that said, I would like to welcome Salem Chief of Police Womack to the poll here. Hear from you.
Oh, okay. Stand up.
So the Zoom people can hear you.
Morning, everybody.
Morning.
Yeah. Thanks for the opportunity. I've been looking forward to this because it gets me out of the office. It gets me away from the email. It's just terrible, right? I think email's the devil. And so I just really appreciate the opportunity to interact with the community. I know that I think the Q&A today is probably going to be the meat and potatoes of the meeting. So got a few things we can say to kind of open up, but I'm really looking forward to taking questions and kind of seeing which way the conversation goes. First of all, I do want to say thanks also to all of you business owners and operators. You know, I've been in government work my whole life, basically for 31 years in police, but my whole life I've always had just this appreciation and recognition of business owners and operators and the work you do, driving our economy. And recently, what we've been through with COVID and all these issues that we're going through, you all are problem solvers, right? You're coaches and mentors. You're just always trying to squeeze every last ounce out of the dollar, right? You're efficient. So I have a great respect, and the amount of heart and soul that goes, and I can't imagine the amount of heart and soul to running your own business, right? The weight of your own family success on it, all that goes behind that, the hours. I've just always had huge respect for business owners and operators. So I just want to say thank you up front for that. So for us, you know, I thought I'd just talk high level a little bit about what's going on with public safety as with regard to Salem Police Department. Everyone knows, no surprise for the city of Salem right now, the big issue is just budget. But surprise, it's not just for the city of Salem. I just saw an analysis, you know, as part of the work we're doing for our city council about the budget situation. I just saw yesterday an analysis, kind of an updated analysis of the 5 largest cities in Oregon, and they're all facing a deficit, right? So that goes back to the structural problem we have here in Oregon with our property tax revenue. And so you can learn all about this more with the council discussions that are going to happen. The next meeting is on October 25th. There'll be a couple-hour work session with our council. So I'd encourage everyone who's interested, learning more about the budget situation, to view that meeting online or show up in person. It'll be at the library, Anderson Room, on October 25th. We'll have more information there based on follow-up questions that we received from council during the last work session. So we'll learn a lot more and we'll get more direction as far as which direction the council would like us to go. We're talking about potential budget cuts and all that. Today, I have to be very careful about how I talk about that because it is on the November ballot. So I can't speak legally. I can't speak much about that anymore. So there'll probably be some questions. I have to dodge a little bit. I just want you to know I'm not intentionally trying to evade the question, other than I can't speak to that. Law won't allow me to. So I can just speak specifically to kind of the effects of our staffing within the organization. I've been talking about that for 3 years since I've been here. By the way, I came up from Stockton, California. So I have 28 years of law enforcement there. Coming up here, it's been about 3 years. What I've learned about this organization so far is it's full of incredible people, hardworking, really, really, really good people that care about their community, but also that we're under-resourced. We have a big, beautiful new facility thanks to the community. They all appreciate it. It's an incredible facility, but the staffing, the resources we have haven't grown in about 10 years. And that's the problem that we're having is that as your service and calls demand, your calls for service go up, violent crimes increasing, issues around homelessness are increasing. These demands on our officers and staff are increasing while we're not, growing and keeping pace with that city growth, that service demand growth. We're staying stagnant as an agency. So you've probably heard me talk about death by 1,000 cuts. That's the analogy I like to use because what you're necessarily having to do as a leader, just all like you as business owners, if your costs go up, you have to do 2 things, right? You're going to have to find a way to make the product cheaper, or you're going to have to pass the cost on to the customer, which is revenue, right? If increased revenue is passing the cost to the customer, you can raise your prices. So we're kind of in the same situation if you think about it. As your service demands are going up, you're not adding any new blood into the system. We're going to have to find a way to reduce. And so it's been death by 1,000 cuts for 10 years for us now, where we're making little tiny adjustments. And Jerry was doing this along the way before I got here too. And I can give big examples. For example, we used to have a 5-person public relations unit. They would do stuff like I'm doing right here. They would manage our neighborhood watch program. They would attend community meetings. They would do proactive community policing work. They don't exist anymore because they had to be eliminated so that we could pull back to our core service demands. If you're not keeping pace with your core service demands, you're having to pull from other little areas of the department to make sure you can still staff your patrol function properly. So that's what I mean when I say death by 1,000 cuts. There's been a lot of little cuts like that over the years that haven't been significantly felt by the community because they're just kind of small little cuts along the way. But you reach a point where there's nothing less to pull from and you start having to pull from pretty serious things. Like, for example, last year, we cut our last auto theft detective. So there's little adjustments we're having to make every year because so does that make sense to everybody? There's a need for growth within the police department. However we get there is for the community to figure out. But in the meantime, we're going to keep doing the best we can with the resources that we have. And we're focused right now. I mentioned violent crime. That's really pulling us in, is the violent crime. So I feel the weight on my shoulders as the chief of police. The top priority I have, just like the term implies, public safety. When you say safety, for me, the first and foremost thing is people have to be physically safe and secure, right? So if rapes and aggravated assaults and robberies and murders are all going up, which they are, if you take a look at our 15-year crime summary on our transparency portal, just search Salem PD transparency portal. It's a fancy name for a little web page. There's all kinds of information on there. There's an area with crime stats and reports. There's a 15-year crime summary on there. So you can kind of look at long-term trends, what's going on. We update that every year. So it's like a running 15-year summary. Overall crime is flat on there. You'll say, wow, okay, overall crime, all types, looks pretty flat for 15 years, just little variations. Property crime looks relatively flat too, but it's actually kind of trending down over the past few years when you look at it. But when you pull out violent crime, it's been significant. It's been steadily increasing for 15 years. It's actually trending up over the past few years. We're all feeling it and seeing it too, I'm sure, right? There are news reports, the things we're hearing about, things that are going on in Polk County. The assaults on officers are increasing at the same time, not just the number of assaults, but the intensity of the assaults. There's been several since I've been here where our officers have been shot at, right? Just since I've been here in 3 years, that just happened in Polk County over the weekend. So the intensity of the assaults are going up too. So which makes sense. As violent crime goes up, more people in the community have a higher propensity to do violence. Well, the officers that are charged with intervening are going to have to confront those folks. And so the danger level goes up as well. So we're seeing this trend of violent crime going up, which is pulling our resources. I talked about the death by 1,000 cuts. Thank you. I'm having to focus more on the safety, the physical safety part of the community and also my staff. So for me, that's the top priority when it comes to public safety. I have to make sure that I have the resources redirected to where my officers can be as well trained and equipped and prepared to respond safely as possible. It's always a dangerous job, but you have to make sure we do it as safe as possible. And that we can try to protect our community at the same time. So it's that violent crime focus that keeps pulling us in and away from some of the other work we have to do. Like I'm sure we're going to talk today about homelessness issues and quality of life issues and property theft, property crimes. Those are important too, but you have to have resources to do that. And when you're getting pulled more into your violent crime, it makes it much more and more challenging. So those, I just want to touch about staffing issue that we're facing, the increased call load and the nature of the service demand is kind of really pulling us towards violent crime. And how we want to be more responsive to our community, but that's becoming a challenge for us. You heard from our community through multiple surveys and audits that we want more community engagement. We want more interactions with our police in a positive way, more proactive work happening, not just reactive work happening. And yet when you don't keep pace with service demands, you're necessarily becoming more reactive. Officers are just becoming slaves to calls for service, right? Just call to call to call. They don't have time to do what I'm doing today, like carve out an hour of time to come and interact with the community. That takes time and resources also. If we want to have that sort of engagement and relationship, we have to have time built in officers' day to do that work. So that's where we find ourselves. I don't mean to be all doom and gloom, but I have a short time period here today. I want to touch on it just because that's the hottest issue right now for us is, how are we going to fix this problem with our staffing and our resources in the community? So again, thank you all. Thanks for the opportunity. I'm looking forward to taking questions. Please do pay attention to the budget discussion that's going to happen again on October 25th. All right, thank you.
Thank you, Chief Womack. And you might have to pull up your phone and get some statistics of what's happening in Salem.
They're there.
We have a group of people here that would like to ask questions around that.
I've got some here. I can answer questions if you go.
Yep. Yeah. All right. Look forward to those at the end here. Okay. Next up, we have our Keizer Chief of Police. Copeland.
Thank you. Staffing, that's fun conversation. Budget, that's fun, always fun. Yeah, we're losing money at Keizer too. We're down 3 officers out of 40. We started with 42, we're down to 39. Just lost the last one when Chief Teague left and I took his spot. So yeah, reorganizing things is fun. I think I'm 6 days into the job. I'm trying to figure out a new organization chart and move things around. As soon as I leave here, we're gonna go look for another patrol lieutenant. So I'm gonna be for the rest of the day, which is good for us. Keizer. Keizer's a little bit different than Marion County and Salem. We're 7 square miles, a population of 39,000. We have 39 cops to police 39,000. So we rely heavily upon our citizens in our community to join with us in policing. Couldn't do without them. We have a great town. We have a good support base, which I really appreciate. Really want to say this out loud, but our actual crime statistics have gone down significantly over the last couple of years. And I can give statistics on that. I got pull up on my phone right here. I just got that last week. What we do in Keizer is we're problem-oriented based community. And what we try to do is we look at the top 5 people that we come in contact with last month, the top 5 places, and then the top 5 people we've arrested and why we've arrested them. And we really deploy resources around those top 5 resource drains, as you would put it, to try to solve those problems within the next month. So that the top 5 people this month are not the same top 5 people next month. And we've had some really good success in doing that. We have a community response unit, has 4 people in it, and we've been able to keep them actively involved in solving, responsible for solving. So because of that, you take someone who's committed, 16, 17 different crimes in 1 month, whether that be burglaries, breaking into cars or shoplifts, and you deploy a ton of resources around that, and you provide a packet of information to the DA's office for the next time they go there. It looks like a very well-rounded case that the DA's office gets. to prosecute. So we really try to do that well. There's two other really big issues in Keizer, which are going to bleed over into Salem, Marion County, Polk County, everybody's community, mental health crisis. That is an everyday problem that we deal with. Everybody deals with that. I was in a meeting yesterday with Representative Kevin Mannix and his crew, talking about, it started off talking about needles in the waterways. And we get a lot of needles down at Keizer Rapids Park, just the way it's comes down and then it circles around down there by the dock. And every year our public works guys go to pull that dock out in the wintertime and there's just needles everywhere. And it's a real issue. But that led to a conversation about who's using the needles and why are they using the needles. And then that led to ballot measure 110. And then that led to the mental health crisis. And all these conversations go together. And I know that that the legislator is working on a fix for ballot measure 110, but that won't be till next year, if anything happens. So for those, you guys know I'm talking about the drug ballot measure. Okay, all right. That's a real deal for us. People feel more free to use drugs, and one of those main drugs is fentanyl. So we have a fentanyl crisis. So mental health and fentanyl are destroying our communities. I had talked to Rob Anderson earlier in the week, and he gave me his statistics on fentanyl and drug overdose deaths since 2019. In 2019, there was 5 fentanyl deaths in Polk County. In 2020, it went to 12. In 2021, it bumped up to 40. 2022, fentanyl was responsible for, almost another 40 deaths. And then this year alone, there's 49 confirmed drug-related deaths as of October 1st, and fentanyl was involved in 33 of them. There's 56 pending toxicology as of October 1st. So it's a problem that our communities face, and you never know. I was talking to Rob again over lunch a couple weeks ago, and he's telling me a story about a couple that both you grabbed fentanyl pills, and both of them took one fentanyl pill, and the male died immediately. He said there was 20 fatal doses of fentanyl in the pill that he took, and the gal didn't die but had an overdose. I think Narcan saved her life, and she had like a couple fatal doses in hers. But it's like mixing around a little punch bowl, and you just pull it out, and you have no idea. These guys that are making these things aren't complete scientists, right? They're making fentanyl pills, so you could take one day and take another one the next day, and you die the next day. I'll also tell you, those are the deaths, and our officers and the fire department do a really good job of responding to the scene and deploying Narcan right away. That's saving a ton of lives. We deployed Narcan 2 times last week to save lives, and it happens every day. So I look forward to the community conversation. This is great. Yesterday was a great conversation. I'm sure there'll be more in the future, but rallying together with our business community and with council, I think people in the room that can make decisions and really solve problems is good. So appreciate your time.
Thank you, Chief Copeland. Next up, we have Marion County Sheriff.
Yeah, 2-minute heads up, all right. That's my time. It's like a panel interview, right? And so now you're kind of writing down what Chief Womack said, what Chief Felton said, so not just being redundant. A lot of it, we're obviously facing the same problems. When we talk about, Chief Womack talks about staffing. Andrew's talking about, I'm sorry, I'll be more informal. Chief Copeland's talking about using fentanyl, drugs, these other pieces. And then I hear from the beginning, some of this is what I love, because when we talk about what is the value of this community. And so words were business, public safety, and justice. Okay, and to me, that's community, and that's how we all come together, because we do have resource deficits. Andrew has, there we go again, Chief Copeland.
Nick and I are buddies.
I'll way back. But Chief Copeland, 39,000. So in my East Salem service district, I have 37,000 in 5.5 square miles, and I have 10 dedicated to that East Salem service district. So Chief Copeland has 39 for his 7 square miles and 2,000 more people than what I have 10 for in Salem. So we are constantly facing these challenges. The challenges there that I get is visibility. We don't see your folks. That's because my folks are going call, and they never stop doing so. And so if you break down some of these areas, we have areas, and Chief Womack alluded to it, where we have higher crime that is going on. And so we are dedicating and moving our resources to those areas. A big thing that's really important this morning to look at, this is collaboration. And this is how we better provide public safety to you all, to the businesses. Because one thing that we can't forget, and I think the question we started with was, who's had a speeding ticket? And we all raised our hands. Yeah, we're all part of this community. So livability to us is as important, if not more important, than you all, because we are largely responsible for what that livability looks like. And everything that we do comes back to that common core of how do we increase livability. Chief Womack's talking about moving resources. Chief Copeland's talking about looking at fentanyl and what is fentanyl doing. And that gets us to ballot measure 110. Yes, quite, I'm hoping we're going to get some sort of change to ballot measure 1. Ballot measure 110 never worked the way it was intended to. And so the concept of getting folks into treatment, yes, I will tell you the sheriff's office is a huge supporter of this. When we look at, and I have the different piece of basically with the sheriff's office, I get into every part of the criminal justice system. The only one that I tangentially get into is with the chief DDA over there. And when we talk about prosecution, we only have a little piece of the prosecution because that really is the DA's office, but every other part I touch. And specifically what that means is I get to the community corrections side. And so we have community corrections under the auspice of the sheriff's office as opposed to it being run by the state, which is great for us, but it's also a detriment because it's run by the state. And so a lot of our money and our funding comes from the state, and we are constantly looking at cuts. We saw cuts this year, about $20 million in what we were receiving from the state to provide those services, which is where we get down into having to cut treatment programs and re-entry programs that are vital to that concept of livability. We want to make the entire community better. We've got to have a direction, and I'll stay away from aid and assist a little bit and let Brendan talk about it, but we've got to have a way to work with these folks and get them back to being functioning members of the community and contributing to the community as opposed to taking from the community. But we need the resources and the dollars to be able to do that. One thing that's very exciting for us that I'm extremely proud of, and some probably heard about, was called our LEAD program. So law enforcement assisted diversion. We have navigators, and all 3 of these navigators have come from within the criminal justice system. And then they've made changes. And so now they're certified drug and alcohol counselors. They're making those changes in their lives. And when we talk about the behavioral change curve to get to influence and persuasion. And influence and persuasion is everyone deciding, and I keep looking for your sign, everyone personally deciding that they need to make a change starts with rapport. And what we have learned in law enforcement is I can't necessarily walk into the environment and immediately develop a rapport. But these navigators, they can. And so they can get us into environments that we couldn't get to before. And then we show the collaboration because they bring law enforcement with them. And we show that that trust absolutely can exist. And that trust can exist to the benefit of those folks if you will allow us to help you. But we need to keep funding those programs if that's what we want to do. I will tell you, and some people believe it, jail is not the answer. When you take someone that is 90%, 95% pro-social and everything else that they're doing, and then you put them into the jail and you take away those pro-social things that they were doing, we are pushing them towards a detriment, and they do not come out of the jail better. They often come out of the jail worse. Now, that doesn't mean, as Chief Womack has alluded to, we absolutely need to hold our violent offenders. But we need the space to hold our violent offenders that do not need to be in the community. And right now, where the jail, the way it works and it goes through, I'm pushing people out of the jail because I have no other choice, no other alternative that I don't believe should be in the community. So we are continuing to work that. a staffing issue for me. The commissioners have been fantastic. They have given us the money to open GPod. I literally need the money, and I shouldn't say that. I need the staffing to be able to fill GPod, to be able to run GPod, to be able to hold violent offenders and other folks that don't need to be in the community. We're working on, I'm working on some outside assistance with staffing. I'm the first to admit, I don't have social media. I don't know how social media works. And so when we're talking about hiring that next generation of law enforcement, I need help. I need someone to come in and give me direction. How do I reach out? Where do I reach out? And how do I retain these people? How do I get these folks? And it's kind of everyone's issue. The other thing that we are definitely working on as a sheriff's office is what I'm calling a public safety assessment. And it's looking at the overall services that we are providing across 1,155 square miles. How are we providing them? How efficiently are we providing them? How can we do better? Where do we need some different teams? And that gets back into the collaboration component again of working with these other folks that are sitting right here now. It's not just the sheriff's office, it's not just Keizer, it's not Polk County, it's not Salem. It's us coming together because a lot of these issues span across the city boundaries. They go from urban. And so we have to have a collaborative approach, and we have to continually communicate for that to be successful. Because moving a problem from the county to the city does nothing to solve the problem, and it does nothing to look at that problem. So I think that is a big word right now. And the studies that are going on, I'm a big analytics person. I don't want to have ambiguous conversations. I want to bring analytics and let people see analytics. This is why we need this, and this is what we intend to do with it. Very important to me. So kind of a large rundown, tried to avoid some of the already theirs. My pleasure to be here. Thank you for letting me be here this morning. Excited for the questions, but
Sheriff Hunter, and we are ahead of time. So just take an extra couple minutes. You're welcome to do so. We'll give you a 2-minute head start though. So next up here is Polk County Sheriff Garton. So thank you for being here.
Thanks for the opportunity to come and talk for just a few minutes. I had some of the same stuff that has already been talked about, so I'll try to maybe hit on some specific issues that we're having in our county, in Polk County, in West Salem. One of those things is mental health calls for service. We have a higher volume than we do staff to be able to maintain that. We have one mobile crisis team right now that has a clinician and a deputy riding together, going out and responding to calls inside or outside of the cities. It doesn't matter. And so we're slotted for 2 teams, but we only have 1 right now because we're down 6 positions. 6 positions is a quarter of my staff. So we currently do have those 6 people hired. They're just all in varying stages of training or at the police academy. And so, because that's about an 8 to 9 month process by the time it gets hired from when they can be solo by themselves out on the street. So we've been pretty lean running on our shifts. Part of that, another byproduct of that being short staffed, is our traffic related issues that we're having. We have a bunch of, whether it's just violations like speeding to crimes regarding traffic violation or traffic crimes, aggressive drivers, speeders, DUIs are a big one that we're able to enforce. But my deputies only do those going to and from calls. So it really isn't, we don't have a dedicated person out there doing traffic enforcement like some surrounding agencies do. But that is something we are going to move forward with, and trying to get a traffic dedicated person to be able to go out and work those. We just on regular traffic stops for a violation for speeding, fentanyl pills, firearms, or meth, really anything you can find out of a car. We're pulling that out of cars just when the deputies are going to and from a call. So I don't know exactly if every circumstance is like this, but it's got to be something that's egregious happening right in front of the deputy for them to be able to say, okay, I got to stop my call to be able to handle this in front of me. So that is a big deal. Over the weekend, we had an officer involved shooting. And part of that, just a good reminder, is our Senate Bill 111 process. The Senate Bill 111 process outlines what should happen to the investigation after officer involved shooting and intentional use of deadly physical force. And so that response plan outlines, that it's not going to be the same agency that is involved in the shooting investigating it, that we're going to give the officer, the deputy, a certain amount of time to be able to collect themselves before they give a statement. And so we're in the process of that. We're still in, our deputy's still on admin leave, will be for a little while. Not that he did anything wrong, but he's on admin leave just because that's what it states in the plan that we're going to do. We had another shooting about 2 weeks before that over in Independence where our deputies got shot at. And so I agree with violent crime being elevated right now. And even though our crime levels, overall crime levels, are pretty stagnant, some of our violent crimes are up, but then some of the lower end stuff is down. So it's evening out. Measure 110 is another. I have some stats on Measure 1. So this is statewide, not just with my agency. But there were 5,992 cases issued citations for drugs bearing meth, fentanyl, marijuana, all those. 50 of those, nearly 6,000 actually did in a substance abuse verification. That's if somebody wants out of the ticket, they can call this number, they can answer questions. That's they're out. 50 people have done that since the inception back in 2021. So not a lot of people are doing the follow through. There's been about 4,500 convictions, but those are failed to appears just because people, there's no ramification for them for not showing up. So let's see what other stats. So most of them, 58% of the overall violations are meth. Now, fentanyl, you still get taken to jail on fentanyl if it's over a certain amount of dosage units. And we have seen those in traffic stops, like I said, but we're also Narcaning people or naloxoning them on a regular basis, probably once a week at least, that we're responding to a call. But either we're getting there before medics or we just happen to be in the right place at the right time to be able to do that. So Narcan is something that used to be one of those life-saving measures, and it's just kind of another tool that we carry on our tool belt. So it's really all I have. So I do appreciate the time, and I look forward to questions. That's where I seem to get a little bit better. Awesome. Thank you.
And next up, we have Marion County Deputy District Attorney Murphy. Come on out.
Thank you. I know what you're thinking. Thank goodness now we get to hear from a lawyer. I think you made a dangerous proposition by giving me extra time. Thanks for having me. Good morning. My name is Brendan Murphy. I am the Chief Deputy in the Marion County District Attorney's Office. It's a pleasure to be here today. I know that Paige Clarkson, the DA, would have loved to have been here. Her daughter just graduated from boot camp to join the Navy. So obviously they're celebrating that great accomplishment. So I know that she wanted me to convey that she appreciated the invitation. So you get me instead. Sorry, the best we can. Our office comprised about 30 lawyers. We review about 9,600 cases a year. Just so you know, our lawyers carry a caseload. Our senior lawyers have less cases. They're more complicated, the cases they have. So they have about 80 cases at any open time. Our younger lawyers carry around 220 cases. We are busy. That's a lot, just so you know. It's hard to manage 220 cases and you have witnesses who call you and say, what am I going to testify to? I got the subpoena. I know somebody maybe has done that before on a case of mine. Right over there. I want to kind of, well, have you walk away from my brief presentation this morning knowing two things. First is that Marion County District Attorney's Office, and I will also speak for Aaron's office, the Polk County District Attorney's Office. We do a really good job for this community. We are not lock them up, throw away a key. We are involved with trying to change trajectories, making sure that when we can, we intervene appropriately, early as we can, to change someone, get them appropriate treatment, get them kind of on the right path. But then, of course, when we're dealing with offenders who are committing violent crimes in this community, holding them accountable. And our lawyers work hard to do a good job trying to balance that. And I want you to know that we are involved in drug court, we have a veterans court, we are involved aggressively with diverting low-level offenses away from our courts to get them treatment. But when it comes time to hold offenders accountable, it's very important that we do that well. And that comes from the other thing that I really want you to understand is that we do a good job because they do a good job. We work incredibly collaboratively with our local law enforcement. They're excellent at what they do. We heard a lot of doom and gloom this morning about how hard their job is. It is very difficult, but we are regularly very impressed with the quality of the investigations our office receives from agencies among the other 44 law enforcement agencies that work in the county. And we focus on collaborative kind of solutions to the problems we're facing. So yes, we have our challenges. Yes, law enforcement, of course, is kind of facing some very significant difficulties. However, I'm very impressed, and I know our office is extremely thankful for the work that we get from Marion County law enforcement entities. My doom and gloom is a little bit different perhaps than their doom and gloom, although we have those same problems. We have staffing problems. We have all of those things too. Right now, our office's biggest concern is the increased burden shifting from the state back down to us as a local community. Right now, it feels as though we are more misaligned than we've ever been before when the state fails to uphold its end of the criminal justice process. An example of that is the Oregon State Hospital. The Oregon State Hospital's job is to receive offenders who are potentially facing criminal charges, but they're not mentally able at that moment due to some mental disease and defect to kind of be prepared to stand trial. We send them to the state hospital rehabilitates them and then sends them back to the local community to then proceed with the criminal justice process. Right now, our state hospital cannot keep up with the issues that we're sending. And not only that, they're just simply not fixing these individuals and getting them prepared for trial in a way that when they come back to this community, we can appropriately respond, whether that be diverting them into some other mental health facility or proceeding with trial. Frankly, we are at battle with the state hospital and it feels like we're fighting somebody on our own team. It's been very difficult. We see it at the state medical examiner's office, where their autopsies, that's what they do, is they do autopsies for criminal investigations. It's gone up 30% in the last 3 years. We had already heard about the fentanyl crisis. I pulled the stats from the medical examiner's office. In 2020, they had 628 deaths due to drug toxicity. So they do autopsies for those as well. In 2021, they had 872. In 2022, they had 1,090. So the number is just skyrocketing. I don't have the numbers for 2023 yet because I think Chief already kind of alluded to it. We don't have those numbers because those lab tests are sitting at the state crime lab waiting to be tested. We don't have those drug toxicity numbers. And in part, that's because the state crime lab is overworked and underfunded. And now when we receive these violent crime referrals from our law enforcement partners, it's taking us 6 months to get blood analysis done. It's taking a year for us to get DNA back from the crime lab so that we can proceed with local criminal prosecutions. So again, we are fighting that burden of what is the state, what we're having to do. Currently, when it's a DUI and law enforcement takes a blood test, we now have to send that blood out of state to get tested because the state doesn't do it for us anymore. And think about the cost that means to the local community, our budget. Now, if that case goes to trial, I need to fly a witness in from out of state to come in and prove a DUI. Do you know how many DUIs we do a year? I didn't bring the data on that, but I will tell you it is a lot.
Is it more than 10?
It is more than 10. So it is this push. I don't know if you've seen in the news, the Oregon Public Defense Services crisis, the public defender crisis. I want to be clear. Our office firmly believes that everyone is entitled to a valid, appropriate, robust criminal defense attorney. Absolutely, there's no question about that. As a lawyer, it's so much easier to work with a case when there's another competent lawyer on the other side. That's the way it should be. But right now, we were able to navigate COVID without generating a case log backlog. We can navigate a crisis like that, this public defense service crisis, the state group that is obligated to provide constitutionally adequate defense services to indigent defendants. We have a 280 case backlog of individuals who are out of custody just waiting to get a lawyer. They come to court, the court kicks them over to next month. Maybe we'll have a lawyer for you next month. And there's not much as a prosecution office we can do about that. So it feels right now, one of our major struggles is every kind of where we're looking, we're seeing as we're running into barriers at the state level that increase our costs and prohibit us from effectively doing our job. Ballot measure 110, I'm sure we'll talk about that. The thing I will just say on that, and then I'll end my comments is, you know, ballot measure 110, or however you feel about it, is I think if you have an honest conversation around this issue, we need to recognize that drug addiction is a public health issue, but it's also a public safety issue. Those things go hand in hand, and when you ignore one and not the other, it creates a problem, right? That's something that's been the balance that we've really been focusing on, is how can we have an appropriate public safety response as we manage the public problem that is drug addiction. So with that, I'll look forward to your questions or pump them on to Sheriff Hunter.
Thank you. Thank you, Deputy DA. Next up, we have Polk County District Attorney Felton. Come on up.
Tell you, deputies in my office. I have a good thing to tell me. So not only am I an attorney, I am also someone who runs for office for the job, which is a terrible combination in terms of, right? My compunction is just to say, and also to be the amen corner for Mr. Murphy, because I agree with everything he said, and he's probably said it better than I'm going to say it. But I also agree with everything the gentlemen who preceded me said. So I want to say what they said. And I should sit down. Right? I have blessed by now, I've hit my 10th year as the elected DA in Polk County. But I started in Polk County September 23rd, 1999. So I started here last century. And but I took a little gap to serve as on the parole board, and I worked for the city of Salem. But I've still been involved with public safety in one matter or another since that time throughout my career. I'm really impressed by people who show up at 7 a.m. to talk about public safety, because I love it.
Go us.
Yes, go you, go all of you. And I could do this. Honestly, I could do this the rest of the day. I could do Q&A, and I want to get to Q&A because really we're going to start talking about what you all want to talk about, not necessarily talk about me or what we want to talk about, that sort of thing. So I'm going to go through this as quickly as I can so we can get to what you all want to talk about. And I going last, write down notes. Oh, I should talk about this because they started bringing things up because it's almost too many things to talk about. But I want to talk a little bit about Polk County and why I think it's an amazing place to serve my constituents. And I grew up in this area. I went to South Salem, graduated in 1985, graduated, and yes, those Saxons, but now I'm a Titan, and but everyone knows the link between West and South Salem, back. So it finally got big enough to get its own high school there. So I'm here, and I've been here, but also I've been here long enough. I was mentored by folks who came before these guys. I can think of the chiefs and the sheriff who came before these guys and mentored me, but I've also been mentored by these folks as I was coming up too. I learned from them. I continue to learn from them. And really, what you'll have to realize is that these agencies, we all work together all the time. And I know that shooting that was in the papers this weekend, and I'm not going to talk about anything that is not public or anything like that, but I will tell you that I was out there too. That's my job as DA. I go out there, any officer involved shooting, any homicide, anything like that, I go out there, and Mr. Murphy knows about that. And every one of these agencies was out there helping in some way, doing a job, helping. Now, Brendan's agency wasn't, but I will tell you, everything I almost learned about officer involved shootings, I learned by calling up the Marion County DA's office and saying, how do I do this? How do you guys do that? At Kimmy over there and say, how'd you guys do that? Because they have done their share. So I learned them. So in many senses, the Marion County DA's office was out there with me in spirit, figuring this out, and will continue to be with me. So what you have in this area, in terms of law enforcement, public safety agencies, is real teamwork, real sharing of experiences and function and helping. So that's an incredible strength. We do not basically silo up and do our own thing. And I often think about what I do. My shop is similar to a small business, but different. You know, I'm a small business, and we all are in some ways, but different than what you all do is that I am actively trying to go out of business every day. I am trying to get people to, my client base is guaranteed, unfortunately. I'm trying to eliminate my client base, basically, by getting people to stop committing crimes, by holding them accountable in different ways. Much like Brendan's shop, we hold people accountable differently. Some people, violent criminals, pardon me, need to be incarcerated. They reach a point, violent criminals need to be incarcerated. When we've done everything we can to prevent them from committing crime, they will need to go to prison or jail. Other folks, we do programs. We try to get them off the drugs. We try to get them off the things that are forcing them, making them commit the crimes. We try to give them opportunity. You know, I often say, and the people who are in the drug life, if you are drug sick, we're going to get you healed. We're going to get you in a program to get you off the drugs. But if you're dealing drugs, if you're bringing that poison into Polk County, you're going to prison. Very simple dichotomy there. So we too look for that ways to intervene in people's lives. But I want to talk about why Polk County is an interesting place. We're Oregon's 12th largest county by population, and we're the 3rd fastest growing county in Oregon, behind the Chutes and Crook, if you believe it. And much of that growth, as you realize, is in West Salem. Much of it's predicted to grow by the city statistics by 60,000 people. Some say by 2035. Believe it. So, and we also have a significant non-resident population with Highway 18, 99W, and 22 intersecting the county. People are going back and forth all the time through Polk County, and sometimes they go to one of the greatest tourist attractions in the state, which is the Spirit Mountain Casino. And tell you, they have, as one statistic said, there's up to 3 million people in the Spirit Mountain Casino at its peak. All of those have public safety implications, and they come through the sheriff's department, they come from my office as well. So we see various traffic issues come from there, DUIs come from there, sometimes violent crime comes from there. So we process all of those through our office. And basically every report that comes to the sheriff's office, or may come to the Grand Run Tribal Police, basically there's not a tribal court for misdemeanors. Anything that will go through circuit court from the tribal police department comes through my office as well. So all of those cases which are referred for prosecution, we review for prosecution. So we're very, very busy, and we are seeing an uptick in referrals. This month is Domestic Violence Awareness Month. I asked for some statistics on that, and those, even though they went down in the pandemic, they're starting to uptick as well. And statistics are helpful to a point, because as you know, statistics can be looked at any number of different ways. I really, it's helpful to see things are up. But the question I always ask is, what's the tipping point? You know, fentanyl overdoses, yes, they're up, but what's the tipping point? How many is too many? I think the thing that impresses me fentanyl overdose is that a couple years back, I take an on-call shift and we all work hours. I take a shift myself too, just so I can spread it out so my deputies don't have to take one so often. Plus, I also like to see what's happening out there. I like to hear from the officers after hours as well and go out in the field to see what's going on with them. When overdoses would happen, maybe 2 to 3 years ago, it would be all hands on deck. Everyone would go out and it would be a huge deal. Now we'll get overdoses, especially fentanyl, 2 or 3 times a week, and we just write it up, and it's just almost par for the course. That is a real attitude shift. It is tragic for the families that suffer, for the victims. We had a family that I know in my neighborhood who lost their son. That's very real, very real. So I get it. But there's a real attitude shift about what's happening. It's coming so hard and so fast. And I know the stats are up, but it's really interesting, the attitudes and in terms of how we're perceiving them. To me, that's a real shift in our community about the volume that's happening. Fentanyl, I used to say methamphetamine was the scariest thing I've ever seen. Fentanyl trumps methamphetamine for the scariest thing I've ever seen in terms of drugs and law enforcement in my career. So I'm not wanting to leave you on gloom and doom because the work that law enforcement does is amazing in terms of rising to the challenge. We have incredible partners. We're all challenged for resources, but we have real support in the Polk and Marion communities for getting the job done. And in my 10th year, I've never had such a great spirit of collaboration and community support as I've had right now. So I thank you for the opportunity to be here, and I'll come back here 7 a.m., 6 a.m., 7 p.m. at night to talk to you about public safety anytime. So thank you so much.
Thank you, District Attorney Felton. Just to clarify, Lena, would you like for the Q&A for our guests to come up here and answer?
Yes, could ask their question up there. It would help the online experience, but the presenter, you're welcome.
Okay,
to say that.
got it. Okay, so thank you all for presenting. Thank you for being here. We'll move on to our Q&A section now. So if you would like to ask, you'll be asked to come up here and ask your question so that our Zoom audience can also see you. Okay, so with that said, who's first? All right, Mike, come on over, Mike.
Well, thank you all for being here. I have a question for chiefs and the sheriffs, and then a question for the attorney generals. For the chiefs and sheriffs, Portland City Council passed an ordinance recently that's contingent on state action that would recriminalize or actually criminalize public consumption of controlled substances. My question is for you is what's the practical impact of something like that, given the constraints that you're dealing with now? Is this more of a PR thing, or is there some real practical teeth to that type of ordinance? I know that's a road show that's going to be hitting Salem, Eugene, Ashland, Bend, all the other cities. They're trying to get some momentum here to get the state to act. So that's for the law enforcement. For the attorney generals, based on the volume of cases that you're dealing with and in the misalignment sort of state priorities and funding, how do you prioritize your prosecutions, or what are you prioritizing in your prosecutions currently, and how would those change with a change in alignment of state resources if the state starts holding up their end of the criminal justice system?
Thank you. I'll jump. Yeah. Not softball.
Yeah, I'm not super familiar with this Portland's ordinance. It sounds like a municipal ordinance for public consumption of drugs would make it illegal. So it's probably something you get a citation for. I'm not sure what the penalty is or the consequence of that is, but at least it is some sort of recriminalization to where it would be another tool that we could use, right? Right now, a business owner calls us, somebody's smoking meth in front of their door when they're trying to get in, and customers are coming in and out, and we respond to that. And that is not something that is illegal that we can really enforce and do anything with. So a tool that we used to have, like, I'll remove this problem for you because this person's committing a crime, has been taken away with ballot measure 110. So it would be some level of additional tool that we could use in our tool belt in that response, right? So in that sense, I do think there's value there, but I'm not too familiar with what the ordinance actually is.
Yeah, I think for me personally, if it doesn't lead to some type of addiction recovery treatment, it's just smoke and mirrors. Doesn't really do a lot for the people that are addicted to drugs. I've talked to many people about this, including my brother, who's longtime drug use in prison was the only thing that got him clean. And so without accountability, you give him a ticket. As the statistics heard, 4,500 people failed to appear on those citations for the last couple of years. So I don't think a city ordinance regulating, the open use of drugs is going to do a lot. Then you have budget cuts and who's going to write those tickets and who's going to write those reports. And, it's early on ballot measure 110, my cops were out there writing a lot of tickets, and then they realize it doesn't work and nobody shows up, and the addiction on recovery on the back end never happened. He said 50 people called the number, but how many people actually went to treatment? Probably less than 5. So, anyways, something else has to happen.
So I'll just tie that in quick. So, yes, the idea that we get more teeth, good. So my lead program, for instance, my lead program used to be about 60% was based on low-level drug offender. That's how we got hold of it, meaning that they committed the crime, and then my enforcement folks or Chief Womack, it didn't matter because the lead program goes across the entire county. That gave us the teeth that we needed to go start having the conversation with those folks to try and get into that behavioral change curve, to get that influence and persuasion, meaning you come into the program, we'll provide you with these services, and at the end, the citation that you're now looking at, that citation can go away. So it was teeth. Now that lead referral program is about 55, almost 60% social referrals only, because we don't have that ability anymore following the changes with 110. But kind of what's being stressed here is it's not simply, yes, great, I now have a citation I can issue you, but what is the follow-up for that program? For the jail, for instance, Senate Bill 48 changed our lodging criteria. And so only category 3 offenses now, and without going through that list, those are the only things that can stay in jail. Category 1 and category 2 offenses, we can't take them to jail. So just because I can cite them doesn't mean I can move the problem. And we already I alluded to it earlier, taking them to jail is not necessarily the answer to that problem, especially with our community substance abuse, other things like that. We've got to continue to build the treatment programs, but successful treatment programs based on that behavioral change curve. Because if we don't look at the human side of it, if we just treat everybody like a book, we're not going to solve anything. We've got to look at why do people want to change? What are the motivations to change? That's how we start improving livability. But so kind of back to the original piece, sure, it's another tool, but how do we then use that tool? That's what's more important.
I would be in favor of it. I think my county, which is different than Marion County, I think we have the capacity to develop some lower level, not treatment courts, at least community-based courts that can work at that level, because our officers are very much, and this is what has been lost in 110, can act as gateway resources to move them into treatment, or at least accountability community court types of models. So at our level, we could make something like that work. So I would be in favor of it, because I have a different model than I think Marion County has in terms of their facility and their setup. And my community corrections and my commissioners have shown a willingness to have some flexibility with that. So I think we have some resources that maybe they don't have in Marion County. So I'd be in favor of that. As to your second question, I appreciate Brendan bringing up the topic about the state sort of advocating its role. It's not only some of the issues in terms of mental health that were brought up. Years ago, the state assisted in paying some of the salaries of deputy DAs as well in terms of the supplement. One of the issues that does not get discussed in the public defense attorney shortage, and I choose that word carefully, I don't use the word crisis, because in Polk County, we don't have that issue. We have defense attorneys for folks who need them. We only have ever had approximately 2 people, when I've looked, 2 to 5 at most people who don't have defense attorneys. What exists across the state in counties like mine and other smaller counties is that we have a lack of prosecutors. And we could use some assistance from the state in helping us increase salaries, recruit attorneys to come out to the eastern part of the state to work as prosecutors. There are constantly openings around the state that go unfilled for a long period of time because they can't match the salaries in other parts of the states, or they just can't get people to come out. That would be a great assist from the state to return to that model where the state supplements the salaries of deputy district attorneys, and there should be emphasis on that. I consider that an abdication from the state in terms of this role of assisting the state, so there's a healthier public safety system all around. So that's a piece that ought to be looked at as well.
So I'll start with your second question, which I think was directed more with volume plus misalignment equals how on prioritization. You know, I think it comes to a little bit of an ethos of what it is to be a prosecutor. I think people oversimplify that job. They think it's always a hammer. One of the problems with the decriminalization of controlled substances is, and I want to be clear, overcriminalization is absolutely an issue. But when we were able to address being in possession of controlled substances, we're able to address potential bigger issues upstream, right? Now, what we get is we can't do anything about the possession. So now I'm dealing with a child neglect, or now I'm dealing with the burglary or the robbery that's fueled by a drug addiction. So it depends on what kind of prosecutorial process the community feels is appropriate. Because if we're going to address the more violent things that drug addiction can cause, we need to be able to do so upstream with some intervention on a possession type behavior. And that's why I'm in favor of a 110 fix that at least gives us some ability to intervene. Now, the intervention might be a true diversionary court. You go to treatment, we dismiss your charges. That's all within what DA Felton was talking about as far as an ability to at least be responsive. And that's why I'm in favor of some of the conversations around 110. And I know that the District Attorneys Association has been heavily involved in those fixes that are proposed. And so I do know that the goal there wasn't to necessarily recriminalize all that behavior, but it was to give us teeth so that we can intervene earlier upstream so that we're not just responding to the bigger issues downstream, because unfortunately, when that happens, that has to be our prioritization.
Thank you. Appreciate you guys being here. I always love that we can have this many people here in the morning to talk about these things. Not an easy deal. So thank you. Really appreciate you all being here. Kind of a question up and down the board. I've heard a couple of times that low-level crimes are not, they're on an even keel. They've not have been rising, which seems a juxtaposed to drug use and some of these other crimes. It doesn't seem, so I guess my question is, and I've got a lot of questions that could keep everyone here for about 3 hours, but specifically on this question, if those smaller crimes are not being considered crime, I'm just wondering, how is someone being categorized when everyone seems to have a Nest camera or a Ring camera and you constantly are hearing things? Being in the commercial real estate world, I constantly hear from property owners who are having windows busted and things stolen, etc. It just doesn't seem like those things are in line with higher drug use and things of that nature. So I'm wondering how those smaller, lower level crimes are being categorized, because it seems like, from my perspective, it seems like they're being categorized differently than perhaps what they once were. And if they're not, it just doesn't seem consistent. So sorry if I'm not making myself clear. I'll sit down and shut up.
So I think you're looking at the analytics of the side of it. Are we looking at things differently, or things not being captured now that were previously captured before? And I think that's a possibility. I mean, if you look at Measure 110 and the impacts of Measure 110 are some of those incidents now coming and going, without any documentation following, I think that's entirely possible. So somebody would have to get into the more specifics on the analytics, but I think your question does have validity. It's no different than the Ninth Circuit Court or SCOTUS, and when they make changes, we have to change the way we do. And so I will tell you there are things that 15 years ago that we continue to push through right to the end, that we cannot do that anymore. And those are things that we walk away from. Now, when I say we walk away from, we don't just walk away from it. We call it disengagement with a plan. And so there's some sort of follow-ups. It's kind of like our mental health team. And so you have the crisis response teams that are essentially your acute first responders. And then you have the core team, or now it's the CCOS team, that will then follow up with those type of situations that we can't immediately in the acute problem do something with, because there's case law that says that we cannot. But does that potentially start to change statistics? Sure. And so I think that you would have to plug that into the analytics of how are things changing, as opposed to just the points that are plotted on the map in front of you, where you're seeing some sort of flatness that may not be true to what has actually happened.
And what I would say then is, law enforcement since 1930, I think, we reported standard crime to the FBI, UCR. Recently, it's been upgraded to NIBRS. There's actually more data that we put. It takes longer to write reports. We put more data in that system than ever before. So there's actually more robust crime data into that system now. So when I talk about my 15-year crime summary, it's that old traditional data. It's the old traditional crimes that we've always tracked: burglaries, auto theft, aggravated assault, robberies. I mean, those are those crimes we've been tracking for decades. So those trend lines are accurate, but it's still about reported crime. So for me, that's just reported crime. So if someone smashes your window and you don't report it, it's not going to be captured, right? It's reported crime. All we have is reported crime, not actual crime. So are there less people reporting thefts and low-level crimes? Maybe that's part of it, right? I think that is part of it, because I don't necessarily feel anecdotally that property crime is going down. It seems to me like it's increasing, but the data is not showing that, which means it's not coming into the system. So is there more apathy? Is there less, seriousness to those crimes from even the community? I think there's a little bit of that, but I can't back that up with numbers, but that's my sense. But the data itself, it's the same data we've been reporting for decades. Someone has to report it. That's a calling 911 and an officer takes a report, or we tell you, hey, go file an online report, and you do an online report, it still gets in the system. So as long as the community is actually reporting it, it's getting captured and it's in my crime stats. So that's as you were talking, that's what was coming to mind for me.
I mean, I like what Chief Womack is saying, putting out there, because people will ask me, is crime up or down? So, well, here, let me refer you to the Criminal Justice Commission's website, and I can show you, Polk County, I'm sending a few more people to prison, but I can't really add. I don't know. Do you feel safer? And do you personally feel safer? And if you don't feel safer, well, who cares? So the crime is up or down. Why do you not feel safer? And let's have that conversation, because that's really my job. I'm supposed to I am elected to keep the people of Polk County safe at a very basic level. That's what I do. And why are you not feeling safe? And it's usually a very personal reasons, because my neighbor, someone came on and the doorbell ditched them and knocked over their flower pots, or there's a car that is in front of their house going back and forth, something like that, or their neighbor or their cousin had a horrible incident happen. Let's talk about that. And that is, to me, really what it's about. Why do you not feel safe in your community? Or do you feel more safe because there's more patrols, there's more this or that? Those are the conversations that I find compelling. And because, again, statistics, yeah, I'm sending more people to prison this year. A couple years ago, it went way down. What does that mean?
That's exactly what I was going to mention, is public safety. As a city councilor, Julie Hoyt, by the way, for those of you I haven't met, and I believe that public safety, and I can speak to the budget, should be funded first. Because if people don't feel safe, we are not doing our job. And that's our number one priority. That's our number one responsibility. I was at a neighborhood association meeting last night, and someone that you're describing similarly stood up. She's probably a woman in her sixties. Her family's owned the property in Northeast Salem since 1928. She's dealing with bad actors every day, all day long. And this sweet, tough cookie is going outside and yelling at these people to get off of her property and to stop breaking her fence and to stop doing acts that people shouldn't do in public spaces in her yard. I'm not okay with that. And she shouldn't have to fight those battles by herself. So in the current situation that we're in, my feeling is we're in a crisis in terms of public safety. And we owe it to the people to help them to feel that way. So fund it first. That's my first thing. Help the people to feel safe. Community partnerships is the question I have for you. What's working and what isn't? When I hear about needles in the river, I think about the exchange that happens in Salem every Tuesday, which I have been to and experienced. I know they hand them out regularly. I know that if I brought 2,500 needles used to them, they would give me 2,500 more. And I can walk up and not have any needles and get needles and everything I need to do my drugs except the drugs themselves. So which community partnerships are working, which are not, and how can we help?
I'll go first, just real quick. I've as a patrol lieutenant the last 10 years before getting promoted last week, I was in charge of neighborhood watch. 10 years ago, we had a pretty good, robust neighborhood watch. Many neighborhood watch organizations within the city of Keizer that kind of police their own communities. And it's been really interesting to watch how society has changed from kind of being outside and interacting with their neighbors to not. I now have one active neighborhood watch organization in the city of Keizer. And I tried last year, actually it was earlier this year, to get citywide neighborhood watch going again. We advertised for it, and I had a small room of people. That was like 6 people showed up to talk about neighborhood watch, and out of those 6, nobody started a new neighborhood watch program. So when you're talking about feeling safe, it used to be that you could call your neighbor, hey, I'm out of town, and watch my house, take in and out my garbage cans, pick up my newspaper from the front door, go switch on different lights in my house so it looks like someone's home for the week. That doesn't happen as much. I'd love to see that be more prevalent in neighborhoods. Things that are working well for us. We met with the chamber the other day, talked about homelessness and when to call police. And I think that's the hard part, but what people are struggling with is when do you call, when do you not call? Because we're talking about low staffing. We don't have as many cops. And so you're like, well, I don't want to burden them with this problem, which is a crime that goes unreported. And so it's going to look different for Salem PD. It's going to look different for Marion County. For Keizer, we want you to call. We're busy, but we don't mind. If it's a low level crime, we will get to it when we can. Our officers still respond to every call. We're able to do that within our community. We want a good working relationship with our business owners. We've really worked hard on getting these trespass letter of consent signed by our business community.
Trespass letter of consent.
That too. And so working with the businesses to make sure that they know when to call, and then when someone shows up on their property that shouldn't be there, that we have authority to do our jobs ahead of time. And that's a huge benefit for us. We're seeing probably better working relationships now with the community than we have in the past, but we keep working on those.
What he said, really. I mean, honestly, it's the same situation. I crave having a robust neighborhood watch and business watch program again, but it's just died off.
Yeah.
And it has to do with that public relations units I talked about. Like, you have to have people dedicated and kind of help manage that program. Yes, the community comes together and kind of helps police, but the police are there just helping them navigate, at least have a meeting and do some crime safety tips and prevention information. And then they can do the work, but we don't have the resources to do that anymore. Just yesterday in my leadership team meeting internally, I asked the group, how in the world, as an agency we are right now, can we recreate Business Watch? That's a question I just asked yesterday because of these examples. Councilor Hoy, thank you. There's another councilor right now that's dealing with a group of business owners on McGilchrist that are having lots of quality of life issues, actually. So there's not like huge break-ins going on, but there is a lot of trespassing and stealing stuff out of their garbage can and drug use and all these type of livability issues going around their businesses and some theft. And they're frustrated as heck, excuse my language, right? They're really, really frustrated and they're screaming and they're upset. And I want to help them. And we've met with them several times, but there's just nothing there that I can offer more other than we'll make some special checks when we can. So for me too, it's just that sense of I want to do more community involvement around things that do work, like Neighborhood Watch and Business Watch, but we just need a little bit of staff to make that happen. Homeless services team, I would say, when it comes to the issue of homelessness, we have 2 officers assigned now that are with the city's SOS team, right? And so there is a public safety component to everything we're talking about. And so some of the conversations have been almost, my sense is that police should be pushed out of the equation altogether, or police should be the only answer. Like, there's not too much discussion in the middle. And for me, the homeless services team officers that's the middle. Okay, it's dedicated officers who really, really know well how to interact with folks that are in addiction and behavioral health crisis and suffering, and they understand the ecosystem of different services that might be out there, right? So they're experts. And they do have some enforcement tools also because they're cops, right? And they can also keep people physically safe because they have the tools to do that. So if you go into an unmanaged encampment or you're dealing with folks that are high users in the system that happen to be homeless, these officers are the right ones to have in that equation to help find the right balance, right? Whether it's a carrot or a stick approach that we need to take to oversimplify it. So to me, that's kind of a partnership, working with those communities, homeless service partners in the community, the outreach workers that are out there, partnering with them and communicating on how can we deal with this encampment or these individuals in the right way. But there has to be police part of that conversation too. And too often I just get pushed in one direction or the other, and it doesn't work that way. The answer is actually some sort of collaboration in the middle. We need to do more of that.
Can I touch on something quickly, Sheriff? I do think one of the things is more of a downstream member of the justice system. We are not responding to the scene of the trespass or the, individual kind of behavior that's going on with the property that you're talking about. And so from our perspective, it does make it difficult sometimes to how do we balance a trespass that comes in, that's potentially a C-level misdemeanor, one of the lowest crimes we prosecute, where there's no real punishment that's going to be imposed. From our perspective, what happens is the person doesn't show up to court. So then we have to file additional charges. So then this becomes the case file that's larger, and it becomes a volume issue for us when we have, frankly, just more serious behavior that is always sort of commanding our attention. That has always been a struggle with our office, and I think from prosecutorial perspectives generally, which is the community, right, has the right to care about those livability offenses. Absolutely. When we sit kind of waiting for police referrals, sometimes we lose perspective on how important that is to the community. And what we have to do, what we do, but we are always kind of trying to do better, is really making sure we understand from law enforcement those targeted cases that we need to pay attention to. And that requires good communication and good relationships, because I expect that our lawyers get a phone call from a patrol officer or deputy. And if they call and they say, I know this is just a trespass, but I need you to lean in on this. This individual needs to be removed from this location. I need you to proceed with this case. We have to be responsive to that. We can't do all of them. There's too many, right? And law enforcement knows that, but we also have to be accommodating when law enforcement calls and says, this might not be the crime of the century, but my community needs you to pay attention to this and you need to address this. And that's just a struggle all the time, but that's something that absolutely remains a priority for us.
Thank you. And we have room for 2 more questions, so Alan will take it, and then actually I want to be respectful. Tracy was the second person to raise her hand.
Can I?
And everyone else is up over here.
Can I touch on that? I would fast. I just want to touch on that really quick. So that previous question, and Julie, that's a great question.
She's over here. I thought you were over here too.
Roger. So things that are going well, community action, Soaring Heights, Ideal Options. We have great partnerships in the community, but I really like what I am hearing from the panel, and I think this needs to be emphasized. So where we are successful and where we get our best results is from meeting people where they are, understanding that all of our communities within our communities are unique. And I know that Chief Womack, Chief Copeland, I know through the DA's office, it's you all reaching out and saying, hey, we want to have a conversation, and it's us coming and routinely participating in that conversation. That's where we start to get the open dialogue that builds these collaboration and builds these strengths. So it has to be intentional from us. We have to intentionally get out of our locations and get out to everyone's locations to learn, because your lady in her neighborhood may be unique. And what is the unique problem that needs to be identified that we need to be addressed? But if we don't know what that problem is, then we can't address it. So really, really important on collaboration is us getting out into the communities and truly learning from those folks in the communities. And that builds that strength that then they are willing to call us, they're willing to report. And now we get to where Chief Womack was at earlier, was that's how we can get that better statistic of what's actually going on, because they feel like they have a voice, they feel like we want to listen, and now they're more willing to share that information. And sometimes that information, now we get back to where kind of Brendan was at, it is related to a violent crime. So something that we would have not otherwise known, we pick up simply because of the strength of those relationships. Sorry, that's what happened. Go right ahead.
My name's Alan Rasmussen. I'm the president of the Chamber Board, and I just wanted, before my question, I quickly wanted to say thank you. This is an incredible investment of these gentlemen to be here and give us this time. So I wanted to acknowledge that. Last week, I was at OBI, had an interesting session on Measure 110, and there was like 8 or 9 state legislators, the ones that are going to form this committee to deal with it going into the short session. And my question to them was twofold. I said, why? I have a question and a plea. My question is why Measure 110 has not been repealed. And my plea, it should be your number one thing you're doing in short session. Nothing else should matter. And I sat next to Legislator Przansky. He was sitting right next to me. And afterwards I said, I would argue that our current public health emergency of Measure 110 is a larger problem than COVID ever was. And that the governor could step in and declare a public health emergency to address Measure 110. Because Mr. Przansky was saying, well, we need to repeal Measure 5 and funding. And I would be potentially all for that. But I think the community wants to see drugs stopped before, that's got to be number one. It can't be legal. Then we can address the treatment problem. So my question maybe is a legal question. Is there any ability in the governor to do that, declare a public health emergency? And if she did, what would that mean? And then my quick second question would be, this group is, I'm fairly confident, is very committed to helping you guys. So if there's anything this group can do, please let us know what we can do, how we can help rally the community to give you guys support and address this issue.
I don't know, honestly, if there's the will to make those changes in the legislature. I hope there is. Our board of commissioners and myself and Mr. Felton all signed on to a document that urged the governor and the legislature to repeal it. Just repeal it. We got to get things working again. And so there's little things that we can do, but I'm not optimistic that it'll actually happen. I don't know if that's kind of what you're feeling or not.
Well, I think we urge the decriminalization.
Correct.
That's what the commissioners passed that resolution. We signed on to that. I think that I wouldn't take a position on the legal aspect, Alan, your question there, as the public health emergency. I do think that going forward, if there are ballot initiatives that get put there, I think if this group were to be inclined to support any of those, certainly they'll need some endorsements and financial contributions if this group does those sort of things forward in the political campaign. I wouldn't take a position or another, but obviously you know how to do those sorts of things. But I think you are deeply influential in the community in speaking to folks that you know and have influence with, in terms of when those come out, if you find those to be of merit, certainly this group can pursue from your policy committees.
Thank you. Tracy, I'll ask a question here, and if we can just get a 1-minute answer, that'd be great.
No problem.
Lawyer minute or regular people minute?
Regular people minute?
I just wanted to first say, thank you all for being here. I really respect what each and every one of you do. I really wish that someone from parole and probation would have been here too to chime in. I think that kind of creates, a complete circle, with what we do in regard to community and policing. I'm the former police liaison for the West Salem Neighborhood Association. I've also been involved in the past with CPAC and closely with Salem Police Department many years ago. It seems like a lifetime. I have a question, it's an analytical question for each and every one of you. And that is, do you see a direct correlation? What do the numbers look like when we see these low-level crimes? And then the increasing propensity into crimes where our district attorneys have to step in? And what, where have each of your agencies seen success? And what is working? What is going to work? What is the solution? What is the solution? We can talk about money, we can talk about funding, we can talk about not enough district attorneys, not enough police, not enough. I think that there's definitely not enough community engagement, but what is going to work? What is the solution? We can go down rabbit holes, but we really need answers as a community. And we want to, I want to stand aligned with each and every one of you to see that happen in each and every one of our communities. I think we have to take responsibility because we live here.
So I don't know if they can answer that in 1 minute, but I think I have some of the solution in my closing, but please give us some of your insights. Thank you, Tracy.
Solution to what specifically? That's like, there's, yeah, I'm not quite sure how to answer. So there's a behavioral health crisis, there's a drug addiction crisis, there's violent crime crisis.
Very much the same
Yeah.
thing. And so really, where do we start? What, I mean, where does that begin? Where does the work begin? Because right now we're in a reactionary state. And that is no place for law enforcement to be. We're going to continue to experience increase in violence. I mean, that is not a place where that's where we end up. Where do we begin together?
So, all right. So anecdotally, when we look at that correlation, because it is kind of, there's no numbers to it, and we're not looking at necessarily the causation. It's the conversation of the gateway drug. If you go smoke marijuana, then you're going to gateway into something else. But it becomes anecdotal as opposed to what looks like an actual number. Literally start right here. We as organizations are all having these conversations. We're looking for what you're talking about. We're looking for what is that solution. I do have a brand new undersheriff that has a firm background in community corrections. Let me know when you want him to come be here and he'll come and talk. It'd be good for him. So I have a new commander of community corrections, and both of them can come and address those. They can give you a lot of this when it looks to programs. What does it look like from start to finish? Because they see how it comes in, but they also see how it goes out, and they're able to speak to that kind of connection of where do we see the reduction in recidivism. I will go back to the LEAD program and looking at the concept of what is happening with LEAD. That is where I believe we are progressing towards a solution. We are taking someone, and for instance, the LEAD program last year, I think we reunited 9 mothers or fathers with their children during the year last year. And 9 doesn't seem like this huge number, right? But I heard the question earlier, like how many is too many? Well, 1 is too many. So when we look at 1 success, 9 success, to me, that's a big success for the year when you look at how far those people came from 0 to getting their children back in stable housing with stable employment. That's where we're making success. And so we need to look at that, and then how do we scale that? How do we extrapolate? How do we work that? Because not everyone is individual, they're unique. But how do we continue to build these programs around those conceptual pieces of getting folks out of the criminal justice system, but not just out of the criminal justice system, we're going to push them aside. How do we get them out of the criminal justice system and back to contributing members into the community? I think that's where we start working towards solutions. And I realize that's in a smaller scope because that's not necessarily our violent crime pieces, but that's how we start working some of those.
Thank you.
I know that was not a minute, even close to a minute.
I'll be very, very quick if I can. I just think to end with this, if I could change one thing to begin to solve the problem, which I think has lots of different needs, lots of different solutions, It would be to change the narrative that law enforcement is bad or that law enforcement is. My experience, these are experts, these are intelligent, compassionate human beings who are trying to do the right thing for all the members of the community. And that would be the one thing I wish we could do a better job sending the message back out. So that's how I think we begin to fix it.
Right. Thank you. Let us remember, like I said at the beginning, business, public safety, and justice are the three pillars that uphold the strength of our community here. And it's also these pillars that shape the identity of a community. And unfortunately, there are elected officials who have undermined and disempowered these pillars. So the biggest solution, in my opinion, is to make sure we elect the right elected officials. We need pro-business, pro-law and order, and pro-public safety elected officials. The reality is we have done a horrible job in the past years of losing some key elections that have resulted in the environment that we are in right now. But it's not too late. We have a May election that will determine our new city council, and we will have a general election November of next year. So I do want to use this as an opportunity to give you a heads up that here at the Chamber of Business Advocacy, we'll be executing grassroots efforts to make sure we win some of these elections. We're just starting, so realistically, you can't measure the success of this grassroots until 2 years from now, but we'll do our best in the 2024 election to elect the right elected officials, and we will be reaching out to you to ask for your, not just your dollars. The reality is we're not so much interested in the dollars right now. We're really interested in the sweat equity because that's what funds these campaigns. And I would also encourage all of you gentlemen here to get involved here on your personal lives and let people hear your voice. Appreciate your work, appreciate everything you're doing for our community, and we're here to support you. So with that said, we are adjourned. Thank you, and we'll see you at the airport.